We're going to bring on next Alice Yang. And Alice is from Edmonton, Canada. And she has the title of her essay was A Lesson We Have Never Learned. And she is 15 years old from Edmonton, Canada. Welcome, Alice. We're going to have Jocelyn and Kelly ask the questions. Go ahead, Alice.
Hello, everyone. First off, I am so grateful to be sitting in front of you all. Thank you to all the organizers and judges for making the Global Youth Challenge possible. Today, I hope to bring my opinions and my views on the world as a youth. I entered this competition for an opportunity to express my voice. As COVID-19 began, sickness along with hate spread. Every day, I would scroll through the news and see videos of an old Chinese lady getting beaten up. My anger towards the perpetrators is not fueled by the fact I am Chinese Canadian, but because these acts of ignorance against an entire people have happened time and time again throughout history. I'm frustrated that people have not learned the lesson that the actions of one person or a group of people do not represent an entire race. My essay was about the internment of the Japanese Canadians in World War II because of Pearl Harbor. They became aliens, despite having no connection to the event. 40 years later, the government apologized for their actions. Today, Chinese people are labeled as the source of this China virus. I use this comparison because someone will apologize for beating up that old lady. But I don't want apologies. I want to stop this hate so that no one needs to apologize. I hope that by standing up for my voice at this competition tells the world that we need to understand who the true enemy is. I created my video because I am amazed by how history can predict the future. By using history as a tool and looking at past pandemics, we can predict the impacts of COVID-19 on religion, socio-political issues, and even the future of countries. I use history because past pandemics and outbreaks have changed the world, and we will most likely see the same again with COVID-19. It has already shed light on serious issues such as wealth inequality and government corruption. Our views on public health care and power dynamics between countries will change. Like the plague of Athens and the Black Death, COVID-19 will create ripples within the foundations of our social, economic, and political values. I am here because I want to spread my message. My essay demonstrates that history repeats itself. My video shows that history is a mirror that reflects our future. We must learn from it. I have experienced countless things from participating in this competition. Thank you to all, and I hope you have broadened your perspectives as well. History is our most powerful tool, but also the least used. Open your eyes and see the world not only for what it is, but for what it was and what it will be.
Thank you, Alice. That was very inspiring. Well done. Congratulations. I'm going to bring on Jocelyn now. Jocelyn, please go ahead with your question for Alice Yang.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. You touched on so many topics, and I guess I'll ask you to focus on your essay topic, which was about discrimination and racism. And now again, you've mentioned again, I'm assuming when you say who is the true enemy, I'm assuming you mean hatred and discrimination. Am I correct in assuming that?
For me, in the essay, I talked about virus and the enemy, but I also implicitly that it's ignorance, but it's also up to your interpretation of what you think it is actually.
Okay, so thank you for the clarification. And just a quick follow-up. So again, I agree. These are a lot of big problems. So again, they're, you know, very conceptual. Do you have any specific, you know, like daily things that we can all do to work toward these greater values of being more aware, as we said, using history more as a tool? Do you have anything specific that would help us move to these greater goals?
Honestly, I think that the stereotype around history has to change, because right now people are thinking like in your future you should be an engineer, a doctor, like in the sciences, and then that history is for like old closeted people that just like to read books. I think that stereotype needs to change, because history is actually way more powerful than any of those sciences. Because if you're a doctor, you can save lives, but as a historian or learning about history and understanding history and how it happens, you can actually change the world and save the world. And about more specific issues, let's talk about wealth inequality, for example. Wealth inequality is a huge rising issue in the US, for example. In the US, the taxable income is so low that people actually try to be poorer, because when they go above taxable income, they actually earn less money because they're being taxed so high. So that's something that we can all do, other than just being aware and studying history, is that there's petitions everywhere. There's petitions, you can sign petitions, you can go out to protest, like for example, Black Lives Matter and the no masks. And it's like, make sure your voice is heard. No matter what your opinion is, make sure you are educated when you talk about your opinion. And make sure that when you're talking, you're actually following what you believe is morally right, and knowing that whatever you say, you have evidence and you know that it's not negatively impacting people. There's so many things you can do. Volunteering, already said, and just signing petitions, raising your voice, because in Canada, we have a democratic government, and those government people should be listening to your voices, and they can't listen to your voices if you're not saying them. So no matter what your view is, understand that we have to be aware of historical events and their impacts, and also be aware of your own moral values, and have your own integrity, and make sure that you raise your voice.
All right, thank you very much, Alice. Let's move over to Kelly for a question.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I could sense your passion in your subject, and I think it's very important that you share that. And thank you very much for doing so. You spoke a lot about some of the negative impacts you've seen recently about racism and whatnot. I'm wondering if you can share maybe one or two acts of kindness that you've also been able to witness throughout this pandemic as well.
With the rise of hatred and racism, there's also been a rise of solidarity between people. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter again. For example, with Asians and Black people, there have been both minorities, right? And they've been overshadowed by a majority that sometimes displays ignorance against them. And they've been tried to separate these two minority groups and alienize them. But with the rise of racism and this kind of discrimination, there's been groups of people are coming together to share their thoughts and stand with what they believe is morally right. And as I said, racism and discrimination, these protests against them and these people who are standing with them, they're not just Asian people anymore. They're not just Chinese people at these protests. There's Black people, white people of all ethnicities are there. So along with the rise of evil, we could say, or terrible events, there's also been a rise of people who support these people who are being targeted. And I think it's just amazing how people have gotten together in crisis to support people who they believe are unjustly treated.
Thank you so much, Alice. And I also really love your bedroom wall there where it says you are more powerful than you think. Absolutely. And you definitely are a powerful speaker. Well done.
Thank you. Pandemics and outbreaks have shaken even the most powerful. Throughout history, it has destroyed anything from cities to nations to even empires. And with COVID-19, we will most likely see this happen again. Currently, COVID-19 is a potential game changer. It has already brought to light socio-political issues and changed the political world. It may also represent a shift in world beliefs and a shift in world powers. The Athenian leader Pericles had his leadership questioned when there was a lethal outbreak of typhus called the Plague of Athens in his ancient city-state. Utter havoc raged as many began to disregard laws and lose faith in religion. The balance of power between citizens also changed due to many of the rich dying and their fortunes being inherited by the lower class. This plague also greatly contributed to Athens' loss of power. During the Black Death, many Europeans lost faith in Christianity because their all-knowing God did not come and protect them even when they suffered. 3 decades after that plague, peasants in England revolted in mass protest against King Richard II's harsh measures during the outbreak. These outbreaks have created ripples in cracks in even the most powerful of nations, such as England and Athens. A government's incompetence can spark doubt within its people, and a religion can even be questioned by its followers. Outbreaks do not only leave death in its footsteps, they also leave socio-political changes that transform the world. Today, the U.S. faces criticism of its growing wealth inequality and its flawed healthcare system. From the start of March to now, the net wealth of all billionaires have increased by $308 billion. This has happened whilst millions of Americans lost their jobs. The flawed healthcare system that charges exorbitant prices has not been united in this crisis and has resulted in the loss of thousands of lives. These events and failures have brought severe socio-political issues existing in the U.S. to light, and especially their capability as a government and their stability as a country. Eastern countries such as China, South Korea, and Japan tell a much different story than that of its Western counterparts. For example, COVID-19 has drawn the attention of the global community to a possibly corrupt government in China that has hid the scale of the pandemic from the public. This has instigated many accusations and investigations that may result in something that could change China's reputation and credibility on the world scale. On the eastern side of the world, we also see a much more centralized government. These countries have recovered much earlier than countries in the West, meaning that their economies are getting a head start. This could mean a potential shift of power from west to east, as those countries are recovering first and can take advantage of restarting their economy before the West. There will no doubt be changes on the world scale, such as the view of global public healthcare. Failures were more pronounced in privatized healthcare such as the US compared to Canada's more unified healthcare response. It will be more emphasized and many people will now be able to see the benefit of it. No doubt, grassroots organizations will also rise to advocate for such a system. It also brings to light the incompetence of world organizations such as WHO. For example, Trump pulled the funding from WHO because of their inability to handle a world crisis, and the UN may face backlash and doubt due to them not naming it a pandemic earlier to alert other countries. The world may become wary of the ability of the UN and whether they are actually credible. COVID-19 has brought to light larger socio-political issues such as wealth inequality, corrupt governance, and even the powerlessness of world organizations. This has been a test of the competence of our world powers, and while many have succeeded, others have failed. And these successes and failures are what will define our post-COVID-19 world. Outbreaks throughout history have always represented the end of an era and the beginning of a new time. Although we are not sure what will happen after COVID-19, without a doubt, everything in this world is going to change.